Now, of course, a lot of people are talking about the Marvel MCU right now. Obviously, we've got Captain Marvel in theaters right now, just crossed the $1 billion mark. And so that's happening there. Of course, we've got Endgame coming out and all that kind of stuff. But lest we forget, there's some other movies coming out of the MCU after Endgame. One such movie that we know is at some point Doctor Strange 2 is coming. They've gone so far as to already re-sign director Scott Derrickson, who directed the first film. He's back on board now. Why this is interesting right now is because there are some rumors going around, and I need to reiterate very strongly, these are unconfirmed reports, okay? So these may not be true at all, but this is just what's going around. I've had a bunch of people sending me messages on Instagram and stuff like that, asking me if it's true, so I thought we would talk about it here. There's a whisper going around right now that Doctor Strange 2 is going to come out in 2020. That is actually going to come out next year. Now, there's a few pieces of corroborating evidence that would suggest that maybe there's some validity to this. Anyway, one of the really good movie websites I like reading is MovieWeb, and they wrote the following on this. What we know for sure is that Disney has planted flags on 2 release dates for the MCU, one on May 1st, 2020, and the other on November 6th, 2020. We know that Black Widow is gearing up to begin production shortly, and by the way, I found out a little something at Comic-Con that I'll tell you about in a second here, is gearing up to begin production shortly, which means in all likelihood it's going to be Scarlett Johansson's Natasha Romanoff who takes that May date. Assuming Doctor Strange 2 gets into production within the next handful of months as well, that November date seems very likely. Plus, the first movie came out in November, and that all worked out quite well. So here's the thing, Robert. There has been some whispers because, you know, Doctor Strange was kind of mentioned in some of the press follow-ups at Comic-Con. So there was a little, or at CinemaCon, I should say.
Right.
And that has led to a lot of people speculating now because since, you know, Scott Derrickson was brought back on officially months ago now. So that's all signed, sealed, and delivered. He's official. He had a big presence in Infinity War. We expect him to have a big presence moving forward in the MCU as a whole. And now we're hearing things like this. So at this point, Robert, do you think it's possible that that November release date in 2020 could indeed be what Marvel is holding for Doctor Strange, or could it be something else?
No, you know, I think it probably is Doctor Strange. I mean, the 2 movies that we've seen them making forward progress on, like you just said, they signed Scott Derrickson back, and the Black Widow movie's casting. So yeah. I'm sure Black Widow is going to come out in 2020 in November because they have, look at the pre-production time they've got. I mean, we're a long way from November of 2019. They have 1.5 years. That's plenty of time to get Doctor Strange 2 in the theaters.
Now, if they do, then we're talking about following Endgame, Spider-Man Far From Home, to be followed by a Black Widow movie, to be followed by a Doctor Strange movie. Does that kind of progression make sense to you? Or do you think they should be giving priority to some other films like that right now?
No, I think, look, Doctor Strange has become a really important character in the MCU, especially in Infinity War. I'm sure, Johnny might not ever come back from the snapping. You never know. Of course. Yeah. He's dusted, dude. The Eye of Agamotto could be gone forever. We don't know. But I think that, I Doctor Strange 2 and Black Widow, first of all, we're getting a new movie with Black Widow, even though it's an old character. We've never seen her in her own solo film before, so that's exciting. And I think Doctor Strange 2 would be a fine addition because I love the first one, and I think Benedict Cumberbatch has really come into his own, especially in Infinity War. He's vital to the success of the universe.
The character really did take a major step up. I mean, I loved Doctor Strange a lot, but the character took a major step up, kind of flashing his leather a little bit in Infinity War to a great extent. I actually contend he probably did the best, not counting Thor, who knocked out Thanos in one shot, but I contend that Doctor Strange probably held his own the best against Thanos out of everybody. But, I mean, here's an interesting thing I want to share with you, Robert. So I'm at CinemaCon. It's the waning days at CinemaCon. And I bumped in, look, all the studios are there, all the theater chains are there, all that kind of stuff is going on. And I bumped into somebody, and we got chatting, and they mentioned to me, under the guise of, you didn't hear this from me, But apparently, when we hear that, well, maybe a Black Widow movie could be shooting soon, it's actually sooner than you might think. What I have been told is that mid-May is when they're going to start shooting Black Widow, which, I mean, look, we all knew it was going to be relatively soon, but I've been told pretty definitively that it's going to be mid-May. Like a month and a half from now, they're actually going to be in front of the camera starting rolling. That's a lot sooner than I expected. Can they spin up a Black Widow movie like this fast?
Well, it's funny. I heard a similar thing, but I heard that it might be shooting actually in Pinewood, that or somewhere in England, and
instead of Atlanta.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Atlanta, what I would imagine was where they would be shooting as well. But because I would imagine a Black Widow movie would be more European, kind of like how they shot a few scenes of Infinity War in Scotland. Maybe they're starting there. I don't know. But I heard that they are beginning production in May somewhere. So that makes sense to me.
Which does seem to kind of solidify the idea that May 2020 would be for Black Widow. I can't imagine that's going to be a super heavy visual effects intensive movie. So you could probably get something like that done in a year, no problem.
Yeah, because I want it to be like a Bond film. They've done Bond-esque scenes in these movies. Like in Black Panther, they had that cool scene in South Korea, like the casino scene. And I would love to see the Black Widow movie be a total globe-trotting romp. They've done things. We've seen things happen in other countries in the MCU, but I want to see her go to fight like a real Bond movie, country to country to country, and maybe there's some megalomaniac with an undersea base like in Spy Who Loved Me. I don't know, but back to the Bourne meets Bond meets Fast and the Furious
meets John Wick.
That would be. I'm in, man.
Yeah, you got to have some John Wick sensibilities in there. I think when you do that,
wouldn't that be cool?
That would be pretty cool.
Exists in the MCU.
Okay, that might be reaching a little too
Could
far.
Be cool.
Of course it would be cool. Of course. Imagine if Captain America on the run, so he goes and checks into the Continental. I mean, that would be kind of fun.